And with that, the 2025 dig season is over. Throughout the year, archaeologists excavated, analyzed, deciphered, and rewrote history one discovery at a time. From new faces in the stone hills of Turkey, the first ever sequencing of ancient Egyptian Old Kingdom DNA, to royal Egyptian and Maya tombs, the first ever Roman mass war grave, and new cities in Kazakhstan and Peru, this year it seems like we found a little bit of everything. Hi, I'm Rachel, an archaeologist, and I've been doing year-end discovery roundups on this channel for a while. Not to mention, I do new discovery videos every month, but in addition to doing it this year, I wanted to add something special. So I've partnered up with my friend, Dig It with Raven, to put our heads together and come up with a list of our favorite 20 discoveries of 2025, divided into 2 videos of 10, one for each of our channels. Join us on a journey through time exploring these latest exciting stories from the ancient world that we have curated for you using our real-world experience as archaeologists to source and research them. The discoveries are featured in chronological order. After you watch both of our videos, you can then go and vote for your first, second, and third favorites via the link in the description. Voting will be open from January 4th to 18th, and anyone can vote as long as you have an email. At the end of January, Raven and I will be doing a live stream on this channel to announce the top 3 winners of Discovery of the Year 2025. We are very excited to let you, the viewer, have your say on what you liked most this year. All of my discoveries were actually already featured in my monthly show, and I actually spoke to a few of the archaeologists and scientists who made them. Those interviews are anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes long, whereas this segment is going to be probably just a few minutes. So if you want more detail and you want to hear the news straight from the source, the links to all of those will be linked in this video where I mention them. This video is sponsored by AncientCyprus.com. Cyprus, inhabited over 12,000 years ago in the pre-ceramic Neolithic period, boasts a long and complex archaeological history. AncientCyprus.com is dedicated to fostering interest in Cypriot and Levantine archaeology and supporting archaeology communication. Their work encompasses a diverse array of projects, from developing articles on topics like early Bronze Age pottery to producing 2 billion pixel surface scans of ancient objects and creating extremely high-res 3D models of archaeological ceramics that allow for detailed inspection of surface damage. The organization's goal is to document the entirety of Cypriot and broader Levantine archaeology and material culture. In sponsoring this video, all they want you to do is check out their website, which is linked in the description of this video. So head there after this to learn more about ancient Cyprus. So without further ado, dust off your curiosity, grab your trowel, and let's dig in to the discoveries.
The steppes of Kazakhstan is the world's largest dry grassland and is home to a rich history of nomadic heritage. Groups like the Scythians and the Huns once galloped their horses through the Eurasian steppe, setting up temporary settlements with no need for permanency. But archaeologists have discovered what they're calling the City of Seven Ravines, a vast Bronze Age proto-city that is changing how we view and study steppe societies. The city of Semiyarka was a sprawling Bronze Age settlement spanning 140 hectares, making it over 4 times larger than any of the surrounding villages that existed at the same time. Dating to 1600 BCE, this is the first site in the region we know of to have a large space dedicated to metalworking and bronze production. What this city shows us us is that even mobile nomadic communities that thrived on their impermanence were also capable to build these permanent and well-organized settlements that were centered around large-scale metal production. Semiyarka is located on top of a bluff above the Irtysh River. This positioning may have been strategic and suggests that the city might have controlled movement of people and goods along the river. Initial survey and excavation work has identified domestic dwellings, a large building, and substantial evidence for metallurgy. The large building was twice the size of the domestic ones and could have been used for some sort of ritual or administrative purpose. Metalworking appears to have been designated to one area of the city, as archaeologists found a section filled with metal artifacts, ores, and slag. Semiyarka could then have been an early example of industrial bronze and copper production, which was a major aspect of the Bronze Age Eurasian economy, even though this type of evidence has been notably missing from the archaeological record. Semiyarka is unlike anything archaeologists have seen to date in the steppe, and it may have served as a trade and distribution center for nomadic peoples. This discovery shows that the steppes weren't just wide open grassland used for temporary camps and constant migration. People here were building sophisticated and planned settlements just like many other parts of the urbanizing Bronze Age across the globe. Reports from Semiyarka are still preliminary, but there's no telling what amazing revelations future excavations will bring. This is definitely one discovery to watch.
This next feature is a really exciting one in terms of showing how modern techniques can help solve old hypothesis or rewriting history. At the site of Ephesus on the Ionian coast of Turkey is a burial monument known as the Octagon. Dating back to the late 1st century BCE, it was a monumental white marble 8-sided mausoleum, around 13 meters high, originally surrounded by a Corinthian colonnade and standing on a square base, which is the only part of it still standing in its original spot today. It was discovered in 1904 and at first interpreted as a trophy monument. However, further excavations in 1929 found a burial chamber and a sarcophagus containing a well-preserved juvenile skeleton. Since then, archaeologists have been speculating about the identity of this obviously notable person. The often repeated claim, dating to when the remains were first found, is that they are those of Arsinoe IV, daughter of Ptolemy XII and younger half-sister of Cleopatra VII, who was sent in exile to Ephesus, a Roman city, after rebelling against her sister, and who was later executed on the orders of Mark Antony. These claims were based on the small size of the skeleton, which is not a reliable method for making those kind of hypotheses, and the mausoleum's construction, which was theorized to replicate the famous lighthouse of Alexandria, which would have been Arsinoe's hometown. The cranium, at the time, the cranium was removed and it eventually made its way into the collection of the University of Vienna, where it faded into relative obscurity until 2022, when inquiries about it prompted Gerhard Weber and his colleagues to do a modern analysis which upended pretty much everything we thought we knew about this person. I actually spoke to Dr. Weber about this discovery, so you can watch his explanation of it here. But to summarize, they did a state-of-the-art morphological, genetic, and dating analysis of the cranium and further analysis of bone samples from a femur and a rib bone of the skeleton found in the same tomb. The genetic analysis found that the cranium and the femur belonged to the same person, and radiocarbon dating placed the life of this individual in a time range of between 205 and 36 BCE. But most intriguing was the DNA analysis, which confirmed that the individual is male and therefore not Arsinoe IV. In fact, this person was actually an 11 to 14-year-old boy who suffered from significant developmental deformities and asymmetry in his mouth and eyes, and had an ancestry from the Italian peninsula or Sardinia. So while this answers the question of, is it Cleopatra's sister, with a resounding no, it now begs the question of, who was he? I want to address here quite a few comments that I saw in my original video saying that it could be one of Cleopatra's sons instead, but actually this is not possible either. Her eldest son, Caesarion, was 17 when he was executed by Augustus, so he was too old, and he also died in Egypt. Her youngest son, Ptolemy Philadelphus, was 5 when he disappears from the historical record and presumably died, so he was too young, and he probably died from childhood illness either on the voyage to Rome from Egypt after the death of his parents or shortly after he arrived in Rome. It is a very marshy place, very well known for its fevers, and childhood mortality at that time was pretty high. Her middle son, Alexander Helios, was around the right age and also disappears from the historical record at that age after arriving in Rome. So this kind of matches. However, there are other reasons that he is not the individual from this story. Firstly, the genetic ancestry. Alexander Helios was at least half Roman and either half Greek, part Egyptian, which would have shown up in the ancestry tests. Secondly, given that Cleopatra's family was incredibly inbred, they tested for genetic markers of this and found none. Thirdly, none of her sons are recorded as having any physical or developmental deformities, which maybe the Egyptians would have glossed over that, but you can bet that the Romans, who did not like her, would not have. The cause of this boy's developmental disturbances was not conclusively identified, but it was suggested that it could be Treacher-Collins syndrome, a genetic disorder characterized by deformities of the ears, eyes, cheekbones, and chin. This discovery has opened a wide range of new research questions on the origin, fate, and social background of the Octagon boy. He was possibly a Roman living in Ephesus, and future analysis of the strontian isotopes in his teeth might help understand whether he was born and raised locally or arrived from abroad. Why this young boy was buried in such a prominent Egyptian-style building within Ephesus also remains a mystery for now.
Pompeii will always be the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to new and breathtaking archaeological discoveries. The site has made multiple headlines this year, and my favorite thing to be unearthed from the rubble of Mount Vesuvius in 2025 are the Dionysian mystery cult frescoes. Mystery cults are just that, mysteries. We don't have much to go on in terms of figuring out what rituals were performed or what the religions actually entailed. They were even mysterious to the uninitiated Romans themselves. So every time we come across a find like this, we become one step closer to lifting the dark cloud veiling the goings-on with these secret societies. The nearly life-size frescoes found in Pompeii cover 3 walls of an ancient banquet in the house of Thyasus and depict female followers of Dionysus, or Bacchus to the Romans, the god of wine and good times, engaging in secret cultic rituals, all against this sumptuous and sinful red backdrop. Also known as maenads or bacchantes, the women depicted hold swords and have slaughtered animals draped across their bare bodies. There are also some lively satyrs playing the flute, and everyone appears to be partaking in some wild ritual dance or celebration. There's also dangling food and baskets of shellfish, marking this as an abundant occasion. We do have one woman who is clothed, and she's probably awaiting her initiation into the cult to supposedly join in on the party. While there are lots of beautiful frescoes in Pompeii, there is only one other depicting a Dionysian ceremony in the entire city at the Villa of the Mysteries. So this discovery is definitely something special. The new banquet hall fresco dates to the 1st century BCE, around 100 years before Mount Vesuvius erupted and buried Pompeii, and gives us another small glimpse into the workings of the Dionysian mystery cult. There was, of course, wine, but there also seems to be a duality to the women in this cult. The huntress and the dancer. Slaughter and revelry in their own pas de deux in the worship of Dionysus. Maenads were the ultimate Roman expression of the wild, untamable side of women. One woman in the fresco is even shown eating raw meat. So, of course, the Romans didn't really view these Maenads in the best of light, as they didn't fit the idea of the well-behaved Roman woman. But the frescoes give us a glimpse of the unabashed freedom that these women enjoyed when partaking in this cult. For me, the colors are so vibrant and lively, and I may be a bit biased in choosing this as part of my top 10 because I saw 2 different productions of the ancient Greek play by Euripides called The Bacchae this year, but nevertheless, it's still a stunning find and still worthy of any top 10 list. What's an archaeology roundup without a super cool Roman shipwreck? There have been a lot of exceptional underwater finds this year, but one I really want to highlight is this amazingly well-preserved Roman shipwreck in Barbir Bay, Croatia. This shipwreck dates to the 1st to 2nd century CE and was first identified in 2021 during investigations of a Roman harbor off the coast. The ship itself measures 12.5 meters or 40 feet long and was found with hundreds of olive pits, meaning that it was likely a trading vessel that traversed the Adriatic Sea. Excavations around the port also found evidence of grapes, peaches, and walnut shells, which either means people in Roman-era Croatia were all charcuterie board obsessed, or this area was used for agricultural trade for a nearby Roman estate. It was probably the latter one, unfortunately. Finding a 2,000-year-old ship this well preserved is extremely rare. Many elements of the upper works are still preserved and are giving us even more information about Roman ship architecture. Work is still ongoing on the shipwreck, and it can't be removed from the water because of 1, cost, and 2, the risk of damage, but it has now been completely cleaned and documented with photogrammetry and 3D modeling. Some of the wooden elements have also been lifted out of the sea, and with all this information, researchers can now create a reconstruction of the ship to see what it originally would have looked like. We can also then further investigate its navigational capabilities. The rest of the ship will be covered with a geotextile and then reburied with sand to protect it for future generations and research. So you won't be able to go dive and see it, but do know that it is safe and protected.
In early 2025, a very exciting discovery was announced in Vienna, Austria, which was found during archaeological work in advance of the renovation of another football pitch when a mass grave of human skeletons was found. Initially, the excavators thought the skeletons dated to the Second World War and had been hastily buried in a bomb crater, as kind of grimly, this is usually the case when they find these kinds of things in Vienna. But as work continued, they realized this was a far more spectacular find. The dead carried iron studs and an ornate dagger, which were dated back to the Romans, almost 2,000 years old. You can watch my chat with the archaeologists who found the grave and are studying the bones in my April 2025 Discoveries video. In total, the grave held the commingled remains of 150 men, most of whom were relatively young, aged 20 to 30 when they died, and once again were in good health aside from the evidence of violence which presumably ended their lives. For example, a spearhead was still embedded in one man's pelvic bone, while other skeletons showed signs of blunt force trauma, including cuts and stab wounds. A piece of spinal vertebra had been struck by an iron bolt from a ranged weapon. The fact that the soldiers were buried and not cremated is significant because cremation burials were the primary method of choice for burial in ancient Rome. The bones date to the end of the 1st or the beginning of the 2nd century CE, a period which marks the beginnings of the city of Vienna as the military camp Vindobona. The evidence of violent trauma led archaeologists to conclude that the men died in a warlike event. At the end of the 1st century, there were several battles with Germanic tribes on this border of the Roman Empire. The bodies lie scattered haphazardly across an area of almost 5 by 5 meters, some on their stomachs, arms and legs stretched out in all directions. This is unusual, as I said, as the Romans, in addition to usually cremating people, had very strict regulations regarding burial customs, and such carelessness suggests an exceptional situation or a lack of time or resources to cremate the dead on the battlefield, as happened elsewhere. It is also possible that the pit isn't just Romans, but also contains the remains from the opposing side. The artifacts found here primarily point to Roman origin, such as the nails of a typical military sandal, 22 fragments of scale armor, and a cheek plate from a helmet. Planned stable isotope and DNA analysis should hopefully give us a better idea of who these men were and where they came from. My personal favorite artifact discovery of 2025 takes us to North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany, where a golden lock was found during a metal detecting survey in a field. After the detectorist reported his find to the local archaeology authority, as you should always do instead of sending me Instagram DMs to ask me to look at it for you, it was identified as a Roman box lock dating to the 3rd or 4th century CE. It is entirely unique in Europe, as it is a miniature version of a standard Roman box lock, which are usually much larger and consist of iron or bronze. This version is smaller than this 1 pound coin that I'm holding here. It's tiny. It's constructed from 2 cylindrical metal sheets, sealed with lids and secured with rivets. The outer casing is also intricately decorated with 2 circumferential rows of opposing openings. A 3D CT scan revealed cross-sections of the internal iron components, including a frame with a spring, a presumed guide rail, a bolt, a base plate, and a pin. It also showed that the mechanism is largely complete but damaged, as it seems somebody poked around in the lock, probably to break it open or to remove a blockage at some point. It was probably used to protect a chest or similar items, similar to the function of such locks for today's jewelry boxes. Archaeologists think that the lock may have reached this region through trade or as a souvenir brought home by a member of the local elite returning from Roman military service. Using comparative finds and the detailed imaging results, experts were able to reconstruct the lock's mechanism and its missing key. A restorer even created a fully functional replica, which has been scaled up to 4 times its original size. This extraordinary find shows the high level of craftsmanship of the provincial Roman blacksmith and metalworking trade, and at the same time gives us new clues about the relationships between the local elites in Westphalia and the Roman Empire, as well as the possible local significance of the site where it was found. Next up, we head to the Mayan site of Caracol in Belize, where husband and wife archaeologist duo, Doctors Arlen and Diane Chase, have been working for the past 40 years. Caracol was one of the most important regional political centers of the Maya lowlands during the Classic period. In its heyday, it covered approximately 200 square kilometers, an area much larger than the present-day Belize city, and it supported more than twice the modern city's population. Today, its ruins include pyramids, temples, palaces, ball courts, and residential complexes. During the 2025 season, the Chases and their team decided to reopen a burial chamber they had first explored in 1993, located in the site's northeastern acropolis. This time, as they dug a bit deeper, they found a second burial chamber covered with red mineral cinnabar, an indicator of high status, and filled with artifacts, including painted ceramic vessels, carved bone tubes, 3 sets of jade ear flares, and a mosaic jadeite death mask. Based on the ceramics and stratigraphy, they determined that this tomb belongs to Chaak, the founder of Caracol's royal dynasty, who ascended to the throne in 331 CE. From the skeletal remains, they estimate that he is around 5'7" tall and must have been at an advanced age when he died, since he had no remaining teeth. This is the first time any royal burial has been identified at the site. The pottery vessels in the chamber include a scene of a Maya ruler holding a spear and receiving offerings from supplicants in the form of deities. Another portrays the image of the Maya god of traders surrounded by offerings. Research continues on the contents of the chamber with the reconstruction of the jadeite death mask and ancient DNA and stable isotopes analysis of the skeletal material in progress as we speak. You can watch my interview with the Doctors Chase via the link in the top corner. Ancient DNA continued to change our perspective of history as we know it in this next discovery. During a wider project looking at genetics of early Anglo-Saxon England, 2 individuals from 2 separate sites popped up showing sub-Saharan West African ancestry. At Updown Cemetery in Kent, an 11 to 13-year-old female was buried with a knife, spoon, bone comb, and decorated pot. DNA showed that her maternal aunt, grandmother, and great-grandfather were buried in the same cemetery and had European ancestry. However, her remains returned a 20 to 40% sub-Saharan affinity, indicating that her paternal grandfather was not born in England. Over 300 kilometers away on the coast of Dorset, the remains of a 17 to 25-year-old man had a similar result to the Uptown girl. She's been living in her Anglo-Saxon world. Sorry, I had to put that in there. And though they both had foreign ancestors, most likely a grandparent, they were not related. None of the male's close relatives were found in his cemetery that we've found so far, and he shared a grave with an unrelated male. Interpret that however you want. Radiocarbon dating placed both of their graves in the mid-7th century CE. Both of their burials indicate that they lived, died, and were buried as typical members of their communities. There was nothing in their mode or method of burial to set them out from everyone else. As neither of their grandfathers have been found or identified in the cemeteries, we can only speculate about them and what might have brought them to southern England. Before everyone jumps to, they were slaves, in the comments, I want to provide some historical context of why that wasn't likely. Counting 2 to 4 generations of about 25 years, each back from the mid-7th century, implies that the African ancestors probably left the southern Sahel between the mid-6th and early 7th centuries. This was a period when the culture of the Byzantine Empire was highly influential and popular, even as far away as in England, as well as a time when this empire controlled North Africa. Byzantine coins made their way via the continent to Britain, and Byzantine costume and jewelry fashions are found in 7th century female grave assemblages. A contemporary story of that time tells of a ship laden with grain sailing from Alexandria to Britain in the early 7th century and returning with a load of tin, turned miraculously into silver. This demonstrates that there were multiple pathways by which West African individuals could have traveled to Britain and stayed there long enough to have children. Additionally, while it's possible that the ancestors were victims of the trans-Saharan slave trade, this practice really isn't well documented until 400 years later. So if you're having to compare the two scenarios and add in the fact that their descendants lived and died as a part of their local communities, the hypothesis that the ancestors' presence in England was related to trade routes is the more plausible of the two explanations, in my opinion. Our next discovery comes from Gyeongju in South Korea. Known historically as Sorebol, this site was the capital of the kingdom of Silla, one of the 3 kingdoms of ancient Korea and the first to unify the Korean peninsula. Among Shilla's most iconic symbols of power were its ceremonial crowns, elaborate tree-like structures fashioned from gold, adorned with jade, and intricate designs that symbolize spiritual and political authority. Excavations at the site in Tomb 102-2 have now found one of these crowns, amongst other artifacts and human remains, which is remarkable not only for its ornate design, but for its rare and innovative use of materials in its decoration. Alongside vertical gold extensions shaped like tree branches and deer antlers, the crown features dozens of tiny heart-shaped holes. These were once filled with 15 colorful jewel beetle wings, some of which remained intact after more than 1,000 years underground. This is the first recorded instance of beetle wings being used to decorate one of these crowns. The jewel beetle is prized for its iridescent exoskeleton that refracts light to create vivid green, blue, and coppery hues. The crown was found in situ atop the tomb occupant's skull. The body was also adorned with heavy gold earrings with wide hoops, a chest ornament of dark blue beads, an elegant silver belt and matching bracelets and rings, and over 500 miniature yellow beads, forming a bracelet, and gilt bronze shoes, likely made exclusively for the funeral ritual. Everything was discovered as it was worn, providing a snapshot of royal attire at the moment of burial, which is a rarity in Korean archaeology. Each artifact appears to have been custom-made for this burial. A preliminary skeletal analysis indicates that the tomb's occupant and the crown's owner was a girl between 12 to 15 years old. A young child around 3 years old was buried next to her. These preliminary results have yet to be confirmed via DNA, and it's hoped that further lab analysis will reveal more information about the sex, rank, and lineage of the two burials, as well as whether or not they're related. This discovery not only enriches our understanding of Silla royalty, but also reaffirms Yeongju's place as one of the world's most treasure-rich archaeological sites and landscapes. Next, we head to Benin City in Nigeria, where a historic archaeological project has unearthed new insights into the ancient kingdom of Benin's urban development, artistry, and cultural evolution. Conducted from 2022 to 2024, the Museum of West African Art Archaeology project was the largest excavation in Benin City in half a century, and one of the most extensive pre-construction archaeological programs ever done in West Africa. Once the seat of the powerful kingdom, the city was famed for its sophisticated urban layout and artistic brilliance. Its most celebrated creations, the Benin bronzes, are masterpieces of metalworking and historical storytelling. In 1897, the city suffered immense devastation when the British forces raided the royal palace, looting thousands of artworks, many of which are now in the British Museum, and destroying much of its built heritage. And for decades, its archaeological record remained largely unexplored, until now. Led by an international consortium, the project had over 60 Nigerian archaeologists and technicians participating and gaining advanced training, which is a major capacity building legacy for West African heritage. The dig took place across two major sites, the location of the Museum of West African Art Institute and the Rainforest Gallery, both located within the historic core of Benin City. The archaeologists dug between 1.5 to 3 meters deep, revealing a history of human occupation that stretches from the first millennium CE to the modern post-independence era. Radiocarbon dating showed that some of the layers predate the rise of the Benin Kingdom, which suggests that the area was already an important settlement before the city's royal and political institutions emerged. The main occupation sequence begins around the 14th century, which aligns with consolidation of the Benin Kingdom. Layers from the 16th and 17th centuries correspond to the zenith of the kingdom's political power, trade, and artistic production. Among the most striking finds from the site were ritual and artisanal features like complex shrine areas marked by carefully arranged upturned pots, clusters of cowrie shells, and molded chalk. Evidence of metalworking workshops was found nearby, which contained lead slag, crucible fragments, and traces of copper alloy residues, which offers a rare physical proof of the sophisticated techniques used to create the world-renowned Benin bronzes. Complementing these were finds of imported glass bottles and ceramics, such as 19th century European gin and trade bottles. Evidence of the aftermath of the 1897 invasion was also uncovered in the form of layers of burning and debris. Later deposits include artifacts from the colonial police headquarters and the post-independence hospital. The new Museum of West African Art Institute, which is being built over one of the sites, will serve as a world-class research, conservation, and storage center for archaeological materials from across West Africa. Its laboratories will analyze ceramics, metals, botanical remains, and organic residues to deepen our understanding of past economies, diets, and environmental changes. This discovery is also important in highlighting the opportunities for archaeological research and mitigation in advance of construction in Nigeria and West Africa. All right, everyone, that's the end of my half of the list. Don't forget to watch Raven's half as well, and then go vote to tell us which ones were your favorite. If we didn't include your favorite discovery this year, let me know what it was in the comments. To be honest, if I could, I would include everything, but that video might get a little bit long. I hope you at least come away from this knowing that, despite what crazy nonsense the algorithm might be shoving down your throat, real archaeology is alive, well, and working hard every day to broaden and expand what we know about the past. Every watch, like, subscribe, and click helps channels like mine and Raven's connect people directly to the source of exciting archaeological news. If you're feeling extra generous, a super thanks Ko-fi donation or Redbubble merchandise purchase helps us both keep our channels going. Thanks so much for watching. Stay curious. Happy New Year! And I hope to see you on my next adventure inside archaeology. Gotta get the sweater. This is my very fancy, very nice, on theme archaeology ugly Christmas sweater. I bought it from Jim'll Paint It. It's got scarabs around the cuffs. We've got mummies, Santa. We've got Santa's sleigh being pulled by some camels, the pyramids, the Sphinx wearing a Santa hat. We've got, I think it's Anubis with some candy canes. It's so good. On the back, we have some more stuff that I can't currently see, but I know one part of it reads, "I saw a mummy kissing Santa Claus," which I think is hilarious. But yes, this is my very nice Christmas sweater. I love it. It's way too big for me. I don't care.